welcome to the SNS show with Sid and Sal. What we're going to be doing today is we got a Richard Sherman, highly respected Hall of Fame corner. Obviously, we both respect his opinion. He knows football. We're going to be reacting to what he has to say on Brock Purdy and his possibilities of getting 50 to 60 million dollars. You ready?
Let's do it.
Started off with the San Francisco 49ers and Brock Purdy's contract. It's been a lot of debate. Should he get 60 million? Dak got 60 million. You know, there's other quarterbacks right now with 55 million. Trevor Lawrence got 55. Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, all at 55 million. Tua Tagovailoa at 53. What does Brock Purdy deserve? They did a poll in the Bay Area. 38% say he deserves 20 to 30 million. 29% say he deserves between 31 and 40 million. 19% say he deserves between 41 million and 50 million, and 14% say he deserves between 51 and 60 million. Let me tell you something, people. I hear you. I'm with you. But this is the National Football League. You guys are speaking like fans, and businesses don't quite work that way. I'm sure, you know, you're not happy with his performance right now, but I can name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks on that list making over 50 million that have not even sniffed a Super Bowl.
Okay, so instantly he brings up other quarterbacks and what they're making. Fair point, but what do you think about that?
My reaction is pretty simple. What were the Dallas Cowboys like prior to that $60 million contract?
They're
What
dangerous.
They were a good football team, and then you paid him $60 million, and all of a sudden the Dallas Cowboys are not a good football team. And his argument about, these quarterbacks haven't had a sniff at the Super Bowl or NFC championships like Purdy has. I'm assuming that's what he's going to talk about. But the thing is, Brock Purdy, you can compare to some of those names and say, yeah, he's been to the Super Bowl. They haven't, and that's a fair argument. But the reality is, when you pay a guy 60 million or 55 million, now you're asking him to lead the team to the Super Bowl. And Brock Purdy, in my honest opinion, is not the guy that's going to lead a program or lead a squad to the Super Bowl. Dak Prescott obviously struggled after that change in terms of the roster, diminishing, because, when you pay a guy $60 million, you're going to start to see some good players go out the door. And that's what happened in Dallas. And I know he brought up Tua and Trevor Lawrence, which is fair. I mean, at the end of the day, it is true. You compare to your peers, and that's what you deserve. But if I'm Brock Purdy, I look at my peers that are getting $60 million that don't go by the name of Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and you see the struggles they have. And I bet you any money they would love to have some good help around them. But the reality is, when you're getting that money, you can't afford those guys. So his argument is fair and it's valid, and I highly respect Sherman and what he has to say. But the only reason why I disagree here is that you're saying that we got to pay Purdy the same amount, the 50 to 60 mil, as the peers have. But the one thing they're going to have a similarity in is that they're going to struggle and not get the Super Bowl. And Purdy will be one of those guys, because the defense will not be the same. And he might not have every weapon by the name of, by the names of Christian McCaffrey, IU, Kittle, Debo, and even Jawan Jennings is like, he's got weapons all around him. I'm sure he enjoys that. He's got to take that into consideration when asking for that kind of money.
Yeah, similar to my what I heard instantly is you're naming a bunch of situations that you don't want to be in. Joe Burrow, like, it's awesome. He's a stud. I get it, but as a Bengals fan, how excited are you for the upcoming season? How confident are you that he could take you deep into the playoffs with the team he has around him? Same with Dak Prescott. So it's almost like he argued against what he's trying to say, but
This is where I would disagree with you. When you say the name Joe Burrow and then you follow it up with Dak Prescott, I mean, if I'm a Bengals fan, I'm always excited because I have Joe Burrow. If I'm the Cowboys fan, and this is not a knock on Dak Prescott is a good NFL quarterback, but Dak Prescott is not going to lead the Dallas Cowboys to the Super Bowl without a great roster around him. And I think you're going to say the same thing about Brock Purdy. Joe Burrow, on the other hand, he could work some magic and maybe put up 40 points, when it matters and get you there. But yeah, again, Joe Burrow probably wishes he had some more help, but
He probably
this
wishes he doesn't have to put up 40 points.
that's true, but that's what happens when you get paid. Now you could argue Patrick Mahomes has got the defense and how come, he's not suffering with a bad defense, but he's suffering with weapons around him. He lost Tyreek Hill. He's got a declining Travis Kelsey.
Yep.
And the weapons around him, the best one is a rookie. And a second year player in Ray Rice that they lost, so obviously was a massive loss. Um, so yes, when you pay these guys big money, expect the players around them, to decline in terms of talent. And now you have to be able to carry that team to the promised land. And the 49ers have got the 2019 run is a defensive running football team. I think we passed like 8 times against the Packers in the NFC Championship. You're running it down their throat and you're stopping them on defense. And it's guys like Aaron Rodgers that can't do anything about it because the defense is that good. And then now we're going to go to transitioning to where we're going to ask Brock Purdy to be the guy. And I'm not really excited about that, to be honest.
It's not who the 49ers are. You've had tons of success in the past by doing exactly what you just said. Run the ball, a killer defense. And the second you pay a quarterback $60 million, it's almost like now you have to transition into the 7-step drop. That's just not who Brock Purdy is.
Brock Purdy's a good quarterback, and I think
100%.
it would be wrong of us to say otherwise. But the whole argument is you're paying a guy $60 million. It changes the aspects around him, and I just don't feel like Brock Purdy is the guy that's going to ask for 60 million. I know there's a lot of reports out there that he's going to, but the 49ers give you kind of hints that they might not plan to pay him that. And the one thing that always sticks in my mind is we went to the Super Bowl with Jimmy G, who was a decent quarterback. He was good. He wasn't anything special. And you can get there like that. And we're a play away from winning that game. So I prefer that type of route as opposed to paying a quarterback 60 mil unless you got the name Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Lamar. I don't think you should be talking those numbers. I don't care if the peers get it. Those peers are struggling.
I agree. Let's continue with the video.
Have not even sniffed the second round of the playoffs and haven't come close to winning anything. And this guy's been to an NFC championship and a Super Bowl. I understand it's not going great this season. That's fine. Not every season is going to be go how you want it. You're not going to go to the Super Bowl every single season. But he's had a lot of success in the postseason. And he's played incredibly well in the postseason, better than most of the quarterbacks on this list outside of Joe Burrow. And that's it. That's it. I mean, you could talk about Dak Prescott and his playoff woes. You could talk about Jordan Love and his playoff woes. And they ended the season last year on an interception off his arm in a 2-minute drill. Maybe that narrative changes this year. But Trevor Lawrence has one playoff win and no playoff since. Has been, I think he's 2-15 over his last 17 games or something like that. Tua Tagovailoa has had the concussion issues. So when you're negotiating with a team, unless you're willing to move on from Brock Purdy.
Now, I just want to address that. I know me and you were at the NFC Championship game when Brock Purdy pulls a comeback on the Detroit Lions. Down 24 points.
24-7.
24-7. Brock Purdy balled out that game. Now, he has a stellar team around him, but Brock Purdy balled out that game. And we do know, I think we both know that there's just some players where they could take the pressure, they could handle the pressure, they could swallow it and perform. And I agree that Brock Purdy is that guy.
I mean, it's a fair argument. There's a lot of success that he's had in such a short period of time that you can't overlook. But for me, there's a little, the Ayuk play is a lucky play. And does that start the momentum? Yes. But he does make a lot of big plays with his legs. He makes a lot of big plays under pressure. There's a one-handed catch by Jennings in that game where he's under some crazy pressure, puts it in a spot, he gets it. There's another play on the sideline of Juice where he should be sacked. He ducks out of it, gets away, and puts it on the money on the sideline. He made a lot of plays in that game. I'm not going to dispute that. But again, there's like even your fullback is a Pro Bowler. Like there's so many weapons around him, and that makes life easier. But this is a fact, and I will not dispute that. When the pressure's on, there's certain guys that can do it. When you really need it, where is he? And he showed up. But I just can't get past the fact what the roster is going to look like when you pay him that. Yes, the salary cap's going up, which makes more room. But this comparison that he keeps making with these quarterbacks, he's not bringing up the fact that their seasons are ending so fast. Trevor Lawrence, his season, how do you think he felt? And Dak Prescott, sure, he got injured, but it wasn't going well. Tua Tagovailoa, another bad year in terms of wins. They're not going to win games when you're putting it on their shoulder because they're not the type of quarterback to do that with.
No, I agree. All right, let's keep going.
They're going to be paying him $50+ million. Now, how they maneuver that money, how they dish it out, how much guaranteed, how much upfront money, how much is injury guaranteed, et cetera, that'll be up for debate. But it'll be within the $50 to $55 million ranges. I don't think it'll go to 60. The salary cap has jumped, and it'll jump again. And quarterbacks always, especially top quarterbacks, they're always a certain percentage of the cap. It's been getting really excessive lately because they're closing in on like 24-25% of the cap, but it's usually around 17 to 21% of the cap. It used to be. Now that's kind of ballooned a little bit, but I think he's going to be around 50 to $55 million. Prague and John Lynch are going to.
Now, when I think a quarterback's getting 50 to 55 million, 60 million, I look at it as this has to be a deal that you know for sure in 2 to 3 years that you're not going to look back on and regret. If I have Josh Allen in my locker room, I know for sure it's expensive. It becomes cheaper. We get how the quarterback market works. You have to pay up in a couple of years, it becomes cheap. But if you pay up in those couple of years, it becomes cheap. But it was very expensive for those couple of years, and you regret it because he's not a top-tier quarterback, it's just a big mistake. And Brock Purdy is not someone that I would guarantee you will not regret paying.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think Brock Purdy, if you could somehow convince him to get anywhere in the 40s, you're doing yourself a good service if you're Brock Purdy. And the reason why I say that is because then the 49ers can afford to pay guys around him and keep them around him. They got to, not a lot of people are talking about this, but they've got to extend George Kittle. They've got to extend Fred Warner. These guys are not going to play for non-guaranteed money on a 1-year deal, which is what they got left on their contracts. So, that money, I feel like, is being held right now to find out what they're going to do with Brock Purdy. I find it kind of interesting that something hasn't been done. A lot of people think it's normal. But if you had a Joe Burrow, would it be done? If you had a Josh Allen, would it already be done? And I think it would be. So I think there's some truth to, the 49ers wanting him around and keeping him a 49er for a long time. But are they willing to go to the high numbers of the 50s and maybe even a 60 number? I don't personally think so. I know Sherman has a fair argument here, and this is a guy that used to do his own contracts. Richard Sherman understands the game as well as anyone. So whatever he has to say, it's worth listening. But I do think the 49ers are being cautious here, and the proof is in the pudding. He's not signed.
Yep. Let's keep going.
Figure out how to spread it out. Again, I'm sure there are going to be some salary cap casualties this year. I don't know who those guys will be, but that's why you have to draft well. That's why you have to replenish your team through the draft and have a lot of depth and have young guys ready to step up, because in order to be successful and sustainable for a long time, that's the way you got to build your team. You're going to pay guys. You have good players, you either let them walk or pay them. And you could hear with the Dallas Cowboys. Now you hear them talking, Stephen Jones talking about they may not pay Micah Parsons. I said that this offseason. They hadn't paid him yet, so it doesn't look like they're going to pay him. They're going to see if they can get a first rounder or two for him, and if somebody else wants to pay him. And that's the unfortunate part in this league. Like, if they wanted to pay him, they would have already paid him. And the price is only going up. You know, he's a great player. So I'd guess his demand is $37 million now, when before the season it probably would have been 34, 35. So
How do you think the Cowboys feel about paying Dak Prescott and having to lose Micah Parsons?
Exactly, and that's the part that people are overlooking here when you talk about 50 to 55 mil, is you're going to start not feeling comfortable paying Micah Parsons. Like, the 49ers have paid Bosa, and they did that before the Purdy deal, and maybe they didn't know Purdy was going to be asking this much or it was going to be worth this much, but he ended up going to a Super Bowl, and that raises his value. Sure, he had I shouldn't say a horrible season, but a major decline in terms of his numbers, and obviously that had a lot to do with the injuries around him. And maybe this year it won't be injuries that are around him. It'll just be guys out the door because we got to pay him. So the 49ers have to take everything into consideration when it comes to paying a guy those kind of numbers. Like he said, they can shift it around where maybe some of it isn't guaranteed, or push it back to the later end of his deal so that by then the money makes sense. The 49ers have a lot to do here when it comes to Brock Purdy. I do believe the 49ers will close a deal with him. I just don't think it's going to be the number that a lot of these guys think it's going to be, which is 50 to 55 mil. I'm hoping anyway that it's going to be 40 to 45 mil. We'll wait and see. Time will tell. But Micah Parsons, just to comment on that real quick. Micah Parsons is a game changer. That's probably top 3 defensive players, never mind position. And to just, if you're a franchise looking to win, I don't know how you convince your fans or yourself that it's time to get rid of Micah Parsons and I don't want to pay him. There's a lot of guys I would move off that roster before I considered moving Micah Parsons.
100%. All right.
So I, again, think Brock Purdy's going to get his money. I think he's done a great job over, a lot of his career, the majority of his career. Unfortunately, this is a down year for him. This is an off year. If we talk about stats and passer ratings, he's still amongst the best in the National Football League. And I think that's the part that's going to help him. I mean, his passer rating compared to all the guys we named, he's the top of all of them, 106.3 passer rating over his career. That's fantastic football. He needs some offensive line help. He needs a healthy roster. That's why you're paying all these guys. You need them on the field in order for your team to function the way they need to function. And that's been a problem this year, and you can say what you want about it, but that's how the National Football League goes, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. Now we can keep going to.
That's how the National Football League goes.
It's true.
I don't know.
That is exactly how the National Football League goes. But the difference is Brock Purdy was getting paid $1 million, and all those big names that we're talking about that were injured were on that roster because he's getting paid next to nothing. And I'm not saying that that's what should happen, or if that's even fair that he's only getting that much. It's probably not. But the 49ers, like I'm almost repeating myself, they have a lot to think about when it comes to paying Brock Purdy. Yes, he deserves his pay. It's just a matter of what number makes sense for both sides. I think if I'm Brock Purdy, I want to have the success I've had. I don't ask for top dollar. It's been shown in the past, the guys that ask for the big money, the Aaron Rodgers, and Jordan Love, even this past season, he got paid. And the struggles happen. Like, Aaron Rodgers was one of the best talents the NFL's ever seen. He's got 1 Super Bowl. And I think that has a lot to do with what he was getting paid. He was always in that top tier. And most of his career, he was the highest paid. So these are things that are, they come to a reality when you're getting paid the top dollar, your roster takes a hit for it.
Your roster takes a hit. It's almost like as the QB, you're forced to be Superman. Tom Brady went a different way and it made sense. Patrick Mahomes is going a different way right now and it makes sense. He could easily ask for more money. I just hope that it doesn't drag on. Like, let's figure out Brock Purdy as quick as we can so we can move on to the rest of it. If we're going to keep dragging these contract negotiations along, I don't know. I don't think it's good for the team, and I don't think it's good for anyone. Brock Purdy, I don't think it's good for anyone.
Yeah, for sure. I think the the truth is the 49ers are a little skeptical of paying him that kind of money, and maybe they're trying to use this as a way to negotiate him down. But we've seen in the past that it works against them and it ends up making them pay more money.
Yep. All right, so it was a good talk, and we'll get on to the next one next time. It was fun.
Sounds good, brother. Take it easy.
Easy.